Some years ago, when I was working as a regulatory affairs specialist, one of my assignment was to perform a change notification for one of our products on the Korean market. It had been on the market for many, many years, and this was going to be a simple change notification. I think it was something with the packaging that needed to be notified a change. The Korean authority, however, wanted to do a full review of the entire technical file. And they wanted to compare the initial submission documentation with the current one. And to make a long story short, I was not able to come up or find the initial documentation that was used. And instead of driving a small change notification, we ended up doing a full new product registration, of course, affecting both cost and time. My name is Sandra Larsson, and I work as a business consultant here at TECHNIA, focusing on the life science area. I worked within medical device, both within R&D as well as RA and QA. And now I work with TECHNIA and working with customers and medical device companies to see and help and support how PLM can really make a difference to your product development processes as well as regulatory affairs processes. And with me today I have
Isaksson. So I'm working with regulatory affairs and PLM at Mölnlycke Healthcare, where I've been for 8 years. Previously, I was also working with submission management within the pharma industry. And at Mölnlycke, we are at the end of our MDR transition journey of about 120 product families within the classes 1, 2, and 3.
And we are here today to talk about PLM and specifically how PLM have supported Mölnlycke in running the regulatory affairs processes. But before I leave over to you, Åsa, to show us how you do it, let me just briefly talk a little bit what is PLM. Maybe some of you perhaps Googled PLM yesterday for the first time and want to know what it stands for. So PLM is really, I would say it's more of a way of working. So it's a holistic approach to maintaining and managing all of your product-related data and information throughout the life cycle of your product. And what is important to say here first is that PLM, it's not an IT tool, or it doesn't restrict you to certain IT tools. It covers information, both from the virtual and the physical world. And PLM goes across any man-made or human-made barriers or system barriers, meaning that even if you work in different departments or discipline, maybe your QA, RA, manufacturing, supply, procurement, or if you have systems that are integrated, working perhaps with ERP system, upstream, downstream systems, PLM goes across those borders as well. And a PLM system then, what it does is that it supports the creation and management of your products, basically. Let's look at a little bit more in detail. What do we mean when we say product? So first of all, PLM is not a unique way of working for life science industry. It's been used for, I would say, within the automotive industry, aerospace, over decades. And I would say that working PLM is something that life science industry could really benefit from. Because if you look at it, what is a product? Product can be, it is what you sell, what you place on the market. It could be your phone, it could be a car, the t-shirt you're wearing, or, as we will see, medical device products. Life cycle, really to be able to follow your product from where it starts as a concept, maybe just an idea, all the way throughout how it develops, the different changes that happens to the product, until you have a full ready product that you can place on the market. And also, of course, taking care of the product when it's on the market. And you need to manage this in certain ways. So, of course, you have projects, you have design projects, change projects that you will run to manage your product development. You have different processes, SOPs that you need to adhere to. You have parts and components, both within the product, but also parts and components used when manufacturing your product. You have product structures, BOMs, bill of materials, CAD data, etc. And typically when you work in a global organization and you work with a lot of people in different areas, different systems, way of sending information, you really want to move away from this to this, where everyone can work together, collaborate on the same platform using the same data. So to summarize a little bit why we need a PLM system, it's really to take all of these different functions working in silos and bring them together using the PLM as your backbone to drive and integrate different business processes in your organization for the product development. So hopefully this explained a little bit about what PLM is. And now I'm more curious to find out from you, Åsa, how you have used PLM to support your regulatory processes at Mölnlycke. And perhaps even more importantly, why did you choose to work in a PLM way?
Gladly. Thanks. Absolutely. So I would say we were intrigued by the everything in one place concept. We wanted to get away from updating and looking for information in too many different places. So I think exactly like the picture you just showed with information and people being scattered all over the world, that is how we used to work. And that may be quick and easy for you as an individual. You work on your Excel sheet and you know where you have your stuff. But for an organization, it becomes slow and inefficient. So we also wanted to be able to send information from one place to other systems. So be it our ERP system, the intranet, the web requires certain data, UDI databases all over the world, and possibly eventually UDAMED, right? So this strive for our wish for compliance and efficiency would then be achieved by us gathering this in one place. So the people working with the data we produce and use, the processes we use to create this data, and different tools in one system. And what that meant more in detail is that we then integrated the regulatory processes, so regulatory planning and what is called market authorization for us, which is the execution of your RA planning. We integrated that into the tool where the product data was also already managed, where your design control projects happen, where your change control projects happen. So that meant moving work from SharePoints, local drives, your emails, and into here instead, which was also a big change in mindset from looking at the tool as only a document repository. It's the end-to-end solution for the product life cycle that you talked about, from the seed to a butterfly, including the regulatory life cycle and the regulatory data. So in here, we participate in the design and development projects with our regulatory input that gets documented. And we also run regulatory or submission projects to maintain the regulatory life cycle for all products as well.
And you mentioned regulatory life cycle, or what we like to call it, the circle of life, the regulatory circle of life. Because like any design project, you also need to manage your submissions like projects. You need to have certain activities, you need to plan and set up different deliverables and data you need to collect, manage all the different technical files and dossiers. And you need to submit this, of course, and maintain potential questions that will come up, round 1, round 2, round 3, I heard someone talked about before. And at the end you have the market authorization, of course. And then we start all over again, because then you have a change, or you have a renewal, or you have a new market that wants to open up as well. So let's look at some of these activities also and see how you at Mölnlycke utilized PLM to support these parts.
Exactly. So this circle will be the day-to-day work for a lot of you that work with product registrations. So we'll look at a few examples of where managing this in the tool will create connections and give you functionality that will then aid collaboration and traceability. And we start there at the top with planning. That's usually where we start. So I mentioned that we create submission projects. So that's all of our known and planned registration activities. It can be all the global renewals for the next few years. It is notifications to our notified body, and any regulatory activities that have been identified as part of change projects. They all become visible on our global registration plan, and each submission project hold their own data and their own timeline. So what we see here, everyone sees. Planning and replanning, which we know is quite frequent in projects and in the regulatory world, happens in this place, and everyone sees the same information. And you can also view it depending on what need you have. You can view it by regulatory authority or by business area, or depending on how you want to use the data and present it to different stakeholders.
And what we also talked about was that you have the regulatory affairs processes together with the product design and product development. Is this connected also to the products?
Exactly. So each submission project is connected to a product, which adds then traceability or transparency in different ways, both in this overview where we can see everything that is happening, but also if you look in the system from the product, anyone who can access that view can also see what registration activities are ongoing for that product. And from a change project, you can see which regulatory activities were triggered by this change, and that might affect several products. So change could affect several products. And all this transparency can improve our change assessment. And by that, I mean that the more people that can see what is going on a product, it will help. A common question to regulatory is often, will this have impact? Can we perform this change? And for me as a regulatory person, it will be easier to make that assessment if we can see what is ongoing around the globe. And also on a local perspective, if you're planning a renewal on a product in Mexico, for example, to be able to see from the product what activities are ongoing in EU, for example, that might impact my renewal, will help you to plan better.
Especially now when we're going through these MDR transitions, it's important for the entire organization to know what's going on with the products in different markets, of course.
Yep. But this is the overview. Let's then look at a detail of one of these submission projects that you see examples of here. We now go into one submission project, and we are looking here at a detailed schedule of this submission project. And here is where you can include any tasks and milestones that you wish to plan for this specific project. It can be scalable depending on the activity or the market. So it will look different, and this is where I also meant that we integrated our procedure, our processes here, because how we register a Class 3 product in Australia, that schedule will look completely different from if we notify a Class 1 product, for example, and that we use templates for, and we build the schedule differently depending on different activities. Then the tasks and milestones have a timeline, of course, because we plan and replan in here. So we plan estimated dates, and the tool gives us actual dates as we move through the process steps in the submission project. So we can track progress. We can even measure if we were early. Are we good at planning? Can we improve our planning? Because we can also track the difference there. And we also have a project team in a submission project that can be assigned the responsibility for different tasks and milestones.
And I see here you have some regulatory handlers and administrators. You also have a member in the team, technical product manager. That to me sounds like an R&D person, probably.
Exactly. So a submission project may most commonly be a collaboration between global and local regulatory departments, but absolutely other functions can contribute. And this that I meant that we moved work from outside into the tool is what we do here if we assign an R&D person responsible for a task to sign and notarize a declaration, for example. So the request, instead of sending it in the email, a request to please review and approve this statement regarding material composition for Korea, for example. That is then managed in the tool. You do the review and approval in the tool, and you can track the progress of when it has been performed. And then this statement also ends up somewhere, right? Because we do work with documents and dossiers as well. So we move to the next step of a submission project. So we're leaving the schedule with the milestones and tasks, and now we're looking at the submission dossier. Also, it's sort of the bookmark section of a submission project. So again, this can be scalable, depending. A submission can contain 1 or 2 documents, or you want a very granular folder structure for building your submission, depending on complexity, depending on market. And this can also be managed through different templates that are automatically picked depending on what activity you select. And here you build your submission dossier from different places.
And this is also where you would see the connection to the product, because this is really by combining or by connecting the product to your submission project. The product, and here you say it's called MDP, the medical device product in this case, is part of the submission project, and that gives a look at the DHF then also.
Exactly. So again, the product we selected for this specific submission project, we now have access to the current valid technical file, which means I can populate my submission dossier, pick the documents directly from the technical file, and populate my submission dossier with that. Then the tool gives me a relationship, a connection, which means that, so we see here, for example, a clinical evaluation report that I'm using in my submission. If that gets updated, I will get a notification saying that the clinical evaluation report that you are using has been revised. Do you want to act on it? Because that's a decision I want to make in my specific submission. And vice versa, the document owner will also see from her end where is this document used, and it will be able to see that this actual document is used in a number of ongoing submissions, for example. So just an added layer of transparency which will improve that, or it will improve, and we can see how we affect each other's work more easily between the departments.
Basically being able to do change assessment in a much more efficient way, I would say. So let's go back to our regulatory circular life again and see just where we are. I mean, we could talk about this for the entire day, I'm sure. We have lots of examples of all of these different steps, but let's focus on the result, where you actually get the market authorization approved and your licenses.
Yes. So we now move away from the detail of one submission project, and now we see the result of many submission projects, but seen from one product. So this is the regulatory grid for one product, and the result, you can clearly see where has this product been approved and released, where is work ongoing, and where has a code actually been withdrawn as well. Maybe because it's no longer part of a certificate or a license. And this same data has then been sent to our ERP system, where marketing would then allow the sale to begin. So the RA release in the PLM system is the prerequisite for marketing approving this for sale or opening it for sale in different markets, which means that we have a regulatory grid per product that is clearly visible and traceable.
And when you say traceable, could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yes, because behind this grid is also additional data. So we click here on Korea, and you come to additional details about this approval. Here we can see the license. Okay, point if I see that. Here we have the license number, for example, for this approval. We have an expiry date here. And here we have a number of submission projects that is now forever the history of this product on this market collated in this submission master record, and it will continue to build throughout this product's life cycle in Korea, build on with additional submissions.
I wish I had that when I was doing my submission to Korea, because this is where I guess I would find the history of all the documentation, so that I can utilize it more easily.
Yep, it's traceable now.
Yes. So then the million-dollar question then is, of course, a recipe for successful product registrations. Would you agree then, Åsa?
Well, yes, and to be honest, Sandra, you know, I know, all of these people know that it's not the tool that creates successful product registrations. We do, the people, our data, our processes, but what's invaluable and what we get with this way of working is just some of the examples that we have seen here, that it aids collaboration, transparency, traceability, and that will continue to make us more and more efficient as we develop our ways of working and as the tool develops with us. So for us, in a business that wants to be even more digital and even more sustainable, this way of working is the way forward.
So to conclude, I think some of these buzzwords that Åsa mentioned is really why we love PLM and why we like to work with it, because it really gives you all of this. It lets the people collaborate together with harmonized processes using the same data on one platform, actually making it more easy to have an audit readiness at any time, and also be transparent and traceable data throughout the life cycle. So I think with this, we would like to thank you. First of all, thank you, Åsa, so much from Mölnlycke to join me here on stage, and thank you all for listening to this. I think we can hopefully open up for some questions. If we don't have time, we are also at the far end of the hallway, so both me and Åsa will be there to answer any questions or get more into the details of the regulatory circle of life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
An applause first.